Issue 42, Combat Patrol. No models for me to paint this week, but 2 new paints. Hello and welcome to The Lucky Roll, an eclectic channel for eclectic games. And today we're going to be looking at issue 42 of our continuing series of Hachette Collection's Combat Patrol. Now in this issue you get 2 paints. Now the good thing about paint issues, of course, is that it also comes with a healthy dose of lore. So opening the magazine we see a how to paint guide. Now this is a good how to paint guide if you're following the paint instructions meticulously, because it comes with this Coelia Greenshade, which is a kind of a nice little shade that you can use to add details to your models, such as the Orc War Boss and Mega Armor from the previous issue, and things like the Tyranids, or even some certain select pieces of the Aldari. So what it does is it gives a nice little kind of addition, before and after effect. I think you could see it best here in the sense that this would have been the before and the after, so that the kind of the Coelia Greenshade adds a nice little touch to them. Same thing with the orcs, that they get a little bit of extra skin tone. Now, because there's a lot of orcs coming in the next few issues, naturally enough, this magazine is going to focus on the lore of the orcs and an introduction to them. So as you can see, they're pretty much what it says in the tin. They're just a big horde of monsters that come forward loving and looking for war. It's their sole existence to be, really. Orcs live for war and love for war. However, just because their technology is ramshackle and kind of slapped together does not mean that they're not brutal and not cunning. So they're not an enemy to underestimate either. Now the orcs tend to be the bit of the comedy relief of 40K, but nevertheless they are a very fun army, because it's very kind of put together with all types of different sources. You can see in some aspects that they will utilize beasts. They will also utilize kind of their version of advanced technology. So, but they live for war and are all about war, and they're always led by the biggest orcs. Now this one is called Ghazghul Thraka. He'd be one of the more famous orc leaders. He was also famous as well because he was a big fan of Commissar Yarrick, which was a famous commissar, which has since officially passed away in lore. He famously let Commissar Yarrick go. He had him prisoner, and when Yarrick asked why, he said, because good enemies are hard to find. So for orcs, war is everything, and it was more important to Ghazghul Thraka that Yarrick was still able to wage war rather than defeating him. Again, you can see here as well different kind of technological levels. So you would have, say, a more elaborate kind of plasma machine gun. You would have a fellow just throwing grenades. You would have a little Gretchen bringing the grenade supplies, and another kind of I'd say a flamer weapon, actually, but as you can see, there's kind of a hodgepodge of the actual weaponry here, especially with Ghazghul Thraka, that you can see an awful lot of stuff is just kind of hammered onto him and slapped onto him. So you can see here as well, this is a great little image of the entire orc army, that there is kind of, there's wagons, there's stompas, there is an airplane. There's a lot of really cool little things here, and that the orcs would be a very fun army to kind of paint and collect. You also have here a nice little kind of lore on technology in the 41st millennium. So the technology in the 41st millennium is interesting because it's varied. So you would have, say, Imperial technology, which is interesting because when the Emperor died, they stopped really innovating technology. Now that has changed again with one of the Primarchs, Guilliman, coming back, and finally the Imperium is starting to kind of update its technology a little bit, because they were all about preservation and storage of knowledge rather than innovation, and Guilliman has kind of forced the Imperium to kind of update a little bit, which is probably a good thing for them. You also have high-tech Xenos, so like this would be the Necron, that they would have, it's technically ancient technology, but because they were so much older and so much more advanced than the Imperium and the Eldar, they would be high-end tech. You also have low-tech Xenos, so this would be The Kroot, which would be kind of a faction of the Tau, that a lot of their technology is just bioweapons and going in and kind of slapping you. A touch with some of the orcs and some of the basic boys there. And you have the biotechnology, which is basically the Tyranids, in the sense that they consume and evolve and adapt to different things, so that all of their technology is kind of, I would say, genetic based. You have here part 10 of the Bonds of Honor story, and you have here some example battlefields. Now, of course, you can buy a lot of this collection here. It's a cool little terrain collection, to be fair, from Hachette themselves, but it just shows you how kind of 3D terrain really helps kind of picture the battlefield, and that you can kind of put a lot of these bits and pieces on your terrain sheets like you got in the previous issue, and it makes combat patrols a lot more fun. So this would be the one that you can kind of get from Hachette, I believe, themselves. And again, it's a cool little terrain piece. I remember when it came out and I was tempted to get it, but I have so much to paint that I decided not to. You have here some information about the Dark Zealots. So these would be the combat patrol of the Chaos Space Marines, and you see them here, everything that you would have gotten as part of this issue, plus some alternative builds for the heavy support. So like you have a las cannon, a missile launcher, a heavy bolter, and a Havoc Reaper chain cannon. I believe I made the Reaper chain cannon, but that would be your combat patrol there, and everything you have there is currently on your shelf or my shelf. You also have a Scorched Earth kind of combat patrol rule and play system, and of course the next issue is the first of your Orc Horde, the Orc Boys, and you can see here as well that there's a kind of a different variance in technology, because some guy is just armed with a bolter and a sword, some guy a big huge axe, some fellas two-handed bolters, and one fella a big dirty kind of power axe with God knows what attached to it. So that was issue 42 of Combat Patrol. As always, if you like these videos, please like, subscribe, all that good YouTube stuff, and until next time, this is Sean signing off.